Game 7. Very competitive game. Very strong stuff by both players. I could give you a definition of this or intro. This feels like watching Rocky 2. And Ding is actually Rocky, and Gukesh is actually Creed. Maybe even Rocky 1 or Rocky 2. Really competitive stuff. Game is challenging, a lot of defense resources. I feel like this is like really this maybe the strongest game so far, or the best game in throughout the match. We said this in game 6, but now the level keeps going up now, so it's pretty good stuff. Let's dive in. We had one knight f3. This is very good stuff. The reedy stuff, the reedy opening, it does give you flexibility. You could do transpose to different openings. I think when Ding played this one, he picked up some strange stuff like e3, b3. I wasn't really convinced by this kind of stuff in a World Championship match. But here, you could transpose. You could play English. You could play any kind of opening here, even the London from here, actually. So it does give you flexibility to transpose to different openings. It's good move, actually. So we have d5, and we had g3 and g6. This is pretty good stuff. The only thing you have to be concerned about from White's perspective, let's say play bishop g2 and bishop here, and then you castle, you have to really be concerned about this kind of stuff, or even c5. Black would control the center, whether it was e5, c5, and you don't need to allow this. So we had pretty much d4, makes sense, of course. This is being avoided, and this is also being avoided. So we had bishop g7, and then we have c4. This move order may not matter much, bishop g2 or c4. We have c6. This feels like a Slav kind of stuff, Grunfeld, Slav structure. Very good stuff here, though, bishop g2, knight f6. Castles. And now we have the next move, rook e1. This feels like possibly a novelty and deep preparation by Gukesh. I don't think this is very common. I don't know if I saw it before. Maybe we have a couple games on database, but maybe not so much Grandmaster games. Very good stuff though, because this is actually what we talked about: new ideas. We need new ideas in the openings, and force the opponent to think about it. We had a long sink here by Ding, actually, a very long one. We should say Rocky. Took some time here, and he played pawn takes. Again, time management is key, and usually I would maybe spend like 10 minutes in this move. The reason is this match may be decided by like one move or two move throughout the match. Actually, it could be like whoever faster wins, or whoever moves fast and able to find the right moves, defend his position, might just win the match. It's just the small details. Is this since it's like tied, so you would like to keep some time in a complex positions, right? So let's say you're in move 20, you only have like 5-10 minutes to think about complex position. Chances are, if you're in time pressure, you might just blunder tactically or strategically, and it's going to be based on maybe like a move like d takes c4 and move 7. So obviously you need to speed up. Even if you're surprised by a certain opening, you still have to like do it fast a little bit. You could use your your knowledge. You could even pick like a sideline maybe, but you don't have to spend like 20, 30, 40 minutes because the game may just get like more complex as we go along. So I feel like here maybe 10 minutes, and then just take the pawn. We had e4, and also Dink spent a lot of time on this move, maybe like another 5-7 minutes, and he could have played a little bit faster here. He eventually played bishop g4, and then we had here, and then I think b5, some kind of e4, a5, maybe that's the way to go. But I think this is all preparation by Gukesh. I actually feel like Gukesh is preparing something strange. Like it wouldn't surprise me, like knight f1, h3, some kind of g4. This may be the preparation. You gamble upon, but you're still able to get it back. The bishop at g2 may get active should you play b5. I felt like maybe G4 was coming, you know? I mean, we had to play. I mean, Yukesh playing a lot of G4s throughout the match. Maybe H3, G4 was a preparation, and maybe have like an IG3. I'm not sure. We couldn't tell because, I don't, B5 was never played. And I think the next move actually kind of. I think Ding here, or Rocky decided to play off the beat moves here to basically, I mean, I don't think C5 was preparation by Ucash. It's just like he made a move, Ding, just to kind of like throw him off, so the preparation would be, he's out of preparation here. And yes, Ucash did spend some time here, but however, this move is not the greatest. You're looking at Bishop G2, you're always eyeing this kind of stuff. It has to be like good stuff by White. It is problematic move C5, but Ding is trying to create some kind of like tension early on, forcing his opponent to sink. But we had this strong move, of course. Once you see this kind of stuff, I think thinking here is not the best. I think these just have to like move forward, and we had this. And the problem though, the next move. We have e6, which also I think there's a way like White plays h3, win the bishop pair, and then some kind of knight takes c4, and this has to be White is active. You also have a pawn at d5. It's a pass pawn, and we had exactly this: h3 takes, and then we had takes, and we had this one. You don't want to take this one. This would just simply walks into like White, like have like a really strong ideas here. This bishop f3 is really good now. I mean, here it's almost like not much to do from White's. You could, I don't know, you have to play this something like here, and then simply cannot play rook e8 because you simply lose a piece. So here I think you have to like. You pretty much have to like sack and exchange, and actually this cannot be really good. I don't think there's enough compensation for black. You're dealing with, so actually you take first. Excuse me, you just take first, and then king takes and queen d2. So here, I don't feel like actually like black has any compensation. I know the bishop at d4 is pretty strong, but it's not enough. It's not enough. There's open file already. There's potential here. I think this is likely that Ukesh able to win this, considering the time difference as well on the clock. And he has plenty of time here to think about this. I mean, this is easy to play from White's perspective. That would be like strategically strange choice by Ding, but he didn't go for that. And I think it's the safer approach is just simply play knight here. And then here, I actually felt like knight b6 was a way, but it almost feels like White is already active with the two bishops, But I think Ding found like a really good move, b5. Actually, b5 is maybe the best way you could play this, like complicate the game. I actually could tell you one thing about this move, b5. You would rather take White. Some people feel like White is good, like d5, pass pawn. This position is not easy to play. Even if you're a strong positional player, there's a lot of imbalances happening here that I think it just complicates the game. The first imbalance here, you're looking at 3 against 2. Some end the game stuff could be in favor for black. Should he trade, let's say, even more pawns here? D5, it's a pass pawn, but it could be attacked. It could also be a weakness. White also could claim that this could be a pass pawn. I also have the bishop pair. This is so dynamic, completely dynamic play, and and I think this is really what Ding sometimes like to play, which is dynamic stuff happening. This is not an easy position. After b5, I think the game is already complicated right now, and it's not easy to play. I mean, some people could argue knight e3. I think here, what Ukesh did is actually a good choice, knight e3. Here is the question, though. When you play knight e3, the knight is on the corner, so you have to really find some fast ideas here. I mean, if the knight sits on e3 for the longest time, I mean, black could claim that he has some success now. As after knight e3, we had, queen b6, defending on b5. I could also tell you the bishop at g7 could also get so active, depending on how, like, should we trade some couple pieces, the bishop could also get active. It's complicated, the position. This is a really complicated position. Not easy to play, even though you have the two bishop pair, because it's so dynamic that you could, black could prove that this is all, he could turn this in his favor even should white make this one slight mistake positionally. So he had bishop f4, makes sense, controlling more all of the diagonals. It just feels like white is just developing slowly, try to gain some slight advantage. We have rook here, makes sense. Queen d2, queen develop, connect the two rooks. And this move is pretty good, though. I think this is very good, putting some pinning on d5. And then we had knight c2. This is actually a pretty good move, and this is actually what I meant by the knight sitting on e3 for a long time. It does really, positionally does makes a lot of sense to put the knight at c2. So there's two ways. Would you go to knight e3, or what exactly are you going? We could explain the next move or two, where exactly this is going. Now, we had this move, and I think this is the reason why rook was played here. There's a pin on the queen, so maybe knight e6. The knight is a little bit inactive. It's hard to find a good move here. I actually felt around here. Now we could explain what I mean by, knight c2. I actually felt like b4 was original idea. When you play knight c2, let me just give like a quick line here what I mean. Let's say we go here, you could play b4, which actually did happen. The idea of b4, and then let's say you opening up the square on d4. So usually the knight could jump on d4, opening up some squares for your knight. We could actually make the move here because b4 was actually played. It would be much easier to show it once we have more move in. So we had knight f8, we had b4, and then we had, and this is actually interesting. You're opening up b2, this potential bishop on e1, attacking on e1. However, and also c4, it's also like white is allowing this protected pass pawn, and it's not so easy to see is this is actually really good for white, or the position is balanced. I could tell you the position is balanced. I mean, I don't think that white is winning or anything, but white is trying to achieve some small advantages. After c4, I could explain now what I mean. Then I could somehow go to e3, and some lines goes here. I actually felt maybe white best chance maybe is to play like some kind of e4. I don't know if it's playable right now. Like to open up on b5 or something, like let's say a4, e6 takes on b5. So you may have an open a file. It might be necessary along with bishop e3. Should you open up more lines, considering they have the two bishops, maybe that's good for white. However, here c4 was played, and then we have bishop e3. Now, I feel like this is very critical position here. I don't know if bishop e3, I'm a fan of bishop e3. And also black, just going back move here, and instead of knight here, there's also like e5. The reason e5 is a move is to stop b4. And I think I was a fan of e5 during the game because, white is basically went over here. So he went from knight here to c2, right? And then we had the rook move. We have the knight move. So you have to argue and say that Gukesh is preparing b4 so he could get his knight to better square. He could also consider knight e3 though, but there was, b4 is one of the common ideas. And I felt like maybe black best interest is just play f5. There's still some lines in this kind of stuff. It's not clear how to play this. Black maybe actually might, maybe d6, possible d6. And this may be troubling. And I think maybe after e5, d6, the two, now you connect the bishop has the diagonal. And is d6 as the move you could do? It's not clear. You could also do something else. Perhaps you could take and here, and I felt like maybe a rook here is pretty interesting. Maybe white is trying to improve to say that this pass pawn is really good now. Black may not be able to attack it. This kind of structure is going to be, and then you may have knight e3 in some lines and d6 and knight d5 perhaps. Is it winnable? I am not sure. It's still not clear. It may be the eval bar is giving some kind of an equal. It was like one of the moves you could do is to play e5 because I felt like knight c2 is really b4 is coming next. The problem with knight f8, even though Ding is looking for knight e6, knight d4 in some lines, it's not clear. This knight may be sitting there for a long time. My concern is this knight is becoming passive, and you don't want to be passive in a position like this, right? You're dealing with two bishops. Pawn is still past pawn at d5. The knight is getting into the game in c2. So I felt like knight f8 is like, is not clear if it's a good move. And that's the reason why I felt like a5 may be a better move for black. So we had b4, we have c4, bishop e3. And this is actually a critical, as I mentioned. I felt like the best move by far is queen b8. This is actually not so easy anymore. Should he play bishop d4 or something, I think he could actually play here. And I actually felt like this is really hard to play for both sides. The pawn at d5 might be attacked. He might be looking at knight b6. This is like a mess of a position because it's very hard to play. Which way to play? I felt like this is the best continuation for black. It's hard to make this move knight after d7 because he's just put the knight over here. But you could maneuver that way. You may also have knight e5 in some lines. It's very crazy how to play this. I feel like maybe it's a draw, but you have those, pass pawn here, pass pawn there, and it's just like a mess. Maybe we could also trade the bishop somehow on d4. Even if you get knight d4, knight c6, it's not even clear if this kind of stuff could happen. Quite easy, it will give you kind of winning chances. I felt like this is really intense. Should queen b8 get, should Ding play queen b8, it would have made the game really interesting. Because it's just how to play, which kind of plans you could pick. I mean, here might be a draw after queen b8 or something, but it's not easy to make moves. Queen e6, I'm not enjoying this queen e6. I think there's a reason why Ding played queen e6. By the way, Ding is like in huge time issue here. He's like only have 24 minutes in his clock, and he has to make like, 20 moves, which is kind of difficult. He was kind of like maybe trying to speed up some moves. And that's actually what I meant by, you have to play, should you play a little bit faster in the opening, this may give you more room in a position like this. Let's say Ding has like 40 minutes. He probably spend some time, and let's say he might go to queen b8. And this is actually what I mean by time management. Should you play a little bit faster in the opening? Even if you are being surprised by opening preparation, you can still find ways to deal with this kind of stuff. Queen e6 is like a rush kind of move. I could tell you why queen e6 is played. Should white consider this? He may be looking at queen takes e2, and maybe like telling Gukesh he may not play any rook move, and because I may just take. But I felt like the next move by Gukesh is pretty good. Bishop d4 is really strong here. It feels like white is reaching somewhere. The bishop is possibly better, more centralizing here. There's also queen c3, which is pretty annoying perhaps. White is trying to find ways around this position. So you could see when the queen on b8, it's kind of different, as opposed to the queen is sitting on e6. The move order with it does matter where you put your queen. Should you play bishop d4, then you move the knight on d4. Knight on in d7. So, queen e6 is not, I don't think taking here is a good choice anyway. You guess just getting hit by rook e1 at some point. I don't know, and then a7 becomes weak. So it's not really ideal to take on e2. But, Ding's trying to play fast here. He traded rooks, and then we have rook. And then, queen takes e2, I think, instantly played. And then we have rook e1. When I looked at this position live, I was like, is there a potential way you could trap the queen? I don't think the computer felt like there's a way you could trade the queen. But I think here maybe Ding missed. I think c3 was probably the move here to keep the game actively. And I think, let's say, should you take with the queen, there's like a weird line knight takes d5, and it was just crazy stuff here by the computer. This may feel like kind of equal. And should you take with the here, I suppose you could play queen c4, and the game is really complicated around here. This also may be holdable here, but this is possibly Ding's best choice to play on in this kind of situation. However, we had this queen b3 move. I mean, it has to be bad move. And this is actually what I said, like, the rook could attack the queen. I mean, there's two ways. Rook takes c7, or the best move is possibly rook e5. I feel like the knight at f8 is completely, like, watching the game, is out of this game. White pieces are fully strong. The queen is on b3, not doing much. By the way, the queen is attacking here, but it's like after the next move is pretty. It's just like a one move. I think he's just king g2 in some line. So we had rook e3, but again, just before we continue moving, you look at the pieces. White has better piece movements. Obviously the bishops. The knight also on c2 could still getting active. The rook at e1 is attacking on e7. Black pieces are not like doing much. The bishop's still sitting on g7. Knight f8 is really the questionable piece because it couldn't go here. And should you lose a move and you play here, and the queen may be like misplaced here unless you played like c4, c3 at some point, like a move ago. So we had rook e3, and then we had queen b1, king g2, and then rook d7 defending a7. And here, I think the computer really likes rook takes b5, and I could tell you why. This feels like black is running out of ideas. Like pieces are kind of passive all across. Ding is really in 15 minutes here. It's really hard to find moves for him. There was like a repeat here. Gukesh also, the time is getting a little bit lower for him, so he needed to do some kind of like repetition, but he's not going for a draw here. Queen here, rook e5, queen b3, and then we had rook takes b5, and the next move was kind of like quick move by Ding. Ding is trying to complicate the game. I don't think taking the queen is a really good idea. This only favors black, potentially some kind of like complications. I think the best move here by far, you look at the pieces here, and you have like an active rook at b5. The two bishops are pretty good. The knight is c2, it's joining the party. The best move is like bishop e3. And you look at this, bishop e3. Yeah, and the idea, should you take here, c4 might be weak now. The knight's gonna maybe jump on d4, knight c6. It's just like crazy position. Maybe not d4 because this may allow this, but you're looking at knight e3, rook c5. It's just like pieces, white pieces are well placed, and sometimes this is all it takes to win a game. This is actually gonna be like totally winning for Gukesh. However, we didn't have this move, surprisingly, because he's getting in time trouble, and that's the reason why making use of time management is key. I'm talking about both players, to be honest. We had queen f4, so queen f4 felt like it's a good move, attacking on f6, but he's just giving up the knight. That's fine. Here, and takes, and we have queen f5. The best move here, it's again keeping the two bishops, and I think something like bishop g5 is pretty good. I mean, should you take, this has to be like an extremely good position for white. Now the pawn at d5 is a pass pawn, and it's a big problem for, I mean, look at the knight here. Look at this situation. The knight is not doing anything. Rook c5. This has to be winning. I mean, there's no question about this one. This is easy to play. I'm a little bit shocked that this was never played. I mean, it's easy to see this and tell yourself, I mean, I could slow play this position. There's no need to like get in, even in time trouble. This is easy for white to play though. I was shocked by the next move. The next move is kind of shocking to me. We had queen trade. So even though this double pawn thing, and maybe you could still play here, I'm not sure, but now the bishop is a little bit active on g7. Um, Maybe here still, possibly. However, the next move is completely shocking to me, and it's just like, why? We had, hold on, we need to refresh. We had this move. Why? Why bishop takes g7? Like now, the two bishops were really annoying in this position. Now when you trade one of the bishops, right? When I looked at this, I was like, can't the knight get active? Like knight g6, knight e5. This is easy play and easy. Anybody who was, any kind of like, master level, I guess, could see that the knight on f8 could really outplay the bishop on some lines. The reason the bishop maybe not as active right now is because it's being blocked by its pass pawn. And then it's the knight on f8 is jumping fast enough, like e5. I don't know why Gukesh allowed this. The knight was passively sitting on f8, and now the knight on f8 is like the really the Rocky movie now. It's like it's a star, And after takes here, rook c5 and knight g6, and I was like, this position is not easy to win. I could tell you that much. It's very complicated. I think it's actually draw here. Perhaps was best play by black. You have a pawn, right? Actually, you do have a pawn here. No, hold on a second. We have a pawn after taking on c4. You also, there's a double pawn by black. However, after knight e5, there's better odds for black to draw the game because now the knight there's not enough way to penetrate on black position. There's a lot of blockader. So let's say we could explain this a little bit more. After rook d4, we had knight c6, which is excellent move though. Look at this, the knight jumps, and the idea is pretty simple. Knight e7 is pretty complicated now. I think the only chance maybe some kind of here and possibly here and something like here, and then let's say bishop e2. I think it was a computer line. Oh, not bishop e2. It's perhaps d6 here, something like this. This has to be good for white. You would assume that you're coming in here, there's check, and then you cannot play here f4. You have to go back, and then some kind of bishop b5. And then the pawn goes to d7. So this is the only chance that Gukesh had. But here he was in a serious time trouble too. So obviously he didn't even consider this, I don't think. This is the only way that white could have possibly continue having some active, possibly winning position after rook d2. We didn't have this move we have here. And if you look over here, I think now this may be draw. Around here because of knight e7, and it's not easy to play this, like how to play this for a win. White has a pawn, but it's not easy. The knight is really jumping in ski square, like let's say here, some kind of blockader, and it's not easy, even though it's a double pawn that black has. It's not easy to win this. It's probably draw was best play, and it's easy to play for black now, even in time trouble. So we had here on b5. So after b5, it does complicate the game, right? Because, the knight goes here, knight b6, could always attack on d5. The king goes to f6, even e5 in some lines. I feel like here is a draw, and the only best chance was actually rook d2 at some point. That's just the previous move. So we had king f6, and then we had rook d4, and here Gukesh made the 40th move, and now he was given like 30 minutes. The only move that makes sense here after rook d4 is knight c8, right? Knight c8, continue with the blockader. Should you go back here? I think like king g6, I believe. You could always defend. This is actually heading toward the draw. I mean, white would push. Don't get me wrong. You could still push, but it's not easy to win this. And it's easy to play for black because there's a blockader. All you have to do is just blockade the position. And it should be easier for black to find ideas to blockade the position. And the bishop is sitting on f3. It's not easy. Should you play bishop e2? This is hanging. It's not easy position as far as I could tell you. Even though you have a pawn. So actually here we had h6, my bad, h6 first, and then we had king f1, and that's a mistake though. It's a big mistake. Actually, here is the 40th move, my bad. King f1, and then this is a terrible move actually. This is maybe the worst move in the game by Ding. There is a reason why. I mean, your h6 is hanging. So Ding had like 10 seconds on his clock, and he ended up playing this fast enough. So here you should play, obviously here. This is actually what I meant by knight c8. Should you go back to h4, then the pawn is easily defended. This actually has to be a draw somehow. It's not easy to win this one. But the problem here, though, the situation does change because of rook h4, and I think even rook d6, there's some kind of rook e4, and then some kind of rook e6, and it's very close that this is winning for white, even after, should you play rook d6. So Ding actually played knight d5, and I think this has to be winning. The reason it has to be winning now because you just simply play rook takes. You have this h pawn. It's a pass pawn now. You don't have the same blockader anymore. It's different. Your pawn at h6, you had to hang on to this pawn, right? I don't know why Ding did this kind of move, because you're giving up a pass pawn like this. And I felt like here this has to be winning, but you have to be precise. The only issue I have from Gukesh, when you play a position like this, you have to do use your experience and find the way to try to win. And you could speed up some moves, but you do have to find some kind of an idea to win. Let me explain what I mean by this. After knight c3, which actually doesn't feel like it's a good move because of here, which is excellent move by Gukesh. You cannot take here because of check, and then you lose the knight. So knight c3 does allow white to go back here with a tempo on the knight, which I think this allows white to, it should have a winning position. Knight e4. Here, it seems to be the biggest chance for Gukesh what to do. And I feel like if I'm white, I just start pushing the pass pawn. There's also bishop e2. I mean, personally, I was looking between bishop e2, h4. You have a pass pawn, you start pushing it. We had king e1. And I don't know if I like this move. This feels like, maybe after rook d5, bishop e2, rook d4. The computer here feels there's a lot of drawing chances here. It's interesting. It's interesting to see if this is actually a draw. It's hard to say from Black's perspective. And Ding actually spent a lot of time, so he's actually getting into time trouble again here. However, this may be easier to play, a lot easier for Black to make moves in this position. This one is not clear. And, you could say and argue, Kansas rook c4 simply wins, but it's not easy here in this situation. You could even take, and the position is not even, winning. It's complicated here. This is possibly what Ding had to do, but Ding didn't make this move though. He played f6, and I think f6 does allow white to have some winning chances again, because he doesn't have rook d5. He missed his chance, I believe. But we had h4, and this one was wicked strange. The reason is I looked at h4 now. Sometimes move order in chess does matter. You could argue and say what the difference between h4 early and now. Now you're allowing black pieces to get so active, and if the knight and the rook working together, and if that's the case, let me explain why king e1 was being played though before we continue from this position. I think Gukesh was looking. I have an explanation why king e1 was played. I don't think he was liking this, and then takes. And then, let's say here, king g2 takes on f3. He felt the rook ending maybe is a draw for black, and black may be easier to make some moves, even in time trouble, but it wasn't. Unfortunately, this ending is good for white. It's actually, a matter of fact, it's winning. So this is the reason why he played king e1. He felt like this rook ending is probably a draw, and that seems to be the concern that sometimes you make a move like king e1 just to simply avoid knight d2, and you're avoiding just check and take on the bishop. That's my explanation. After f6, we have h4, and then here things are getting really crazy because I feel like here the drawing chances are really high. Where's the bishop is gonna go? I remember watching the game live, and Gukesh was touching the piece. He put it on d1, and then he put it back on f3. Here, the time pressure is crazy. I think it's still 12 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. But Gukesh wanted more time to think about the possibility of winning. So after here, we had f4, and I think Gukesh was counting on bishop c2 being winning. He may miss this move. Bishop c2 was an idea by him, and he felt that this is winning somehow. I mean, should you trade maybe, and then f6 is hanging, some kind of a trade, or it's just forcing the rook go back to d4. However, he missed this move. It's crazy move, absolutely crazy. Should you take here, and then you have g2? I mean, and obviously this is Rocky stuff. Here's Rocky making this kind of saves. Incredible defense though, because he's just gonna queen in one move. So obviously there's way you could draw this, I think, but I mean, the idea, this possibility to happen, you have to kind of avoid this kind of ideas. So obviously around here we had takes, and here bishop here, it's a try, and then we had excellent move rook d5. This has to be where the draw may be landing somehow. The rook is attacking b5, and it's not easy. Should you play something like here, there's f5, which actually happened. f5, rook b4. This is the way he's just being passive now. White is being passive to defend the pawn. And we have some active play by and actually Ding is like blitzing those moves. He's not even thinking about it. He still has like 5 minutes. But those moves are pretty strong and pretty active. And we are seeing a little bit of blitz play by Ding, which does show, should we go to a rapid and tie breaks, maybe Ding would have the upper hand. But obviously king f3 is much active move now. Knight takes f2 might be a move, and it's just crazy how black was able to find a lot of these resources. Bishop check, king g2, and I feel like king g2, I mean, the king is safe. I feel like king g2 is active. A lot of ideas happening now. Knight takes f2. How exactly you play this? And I think Gukesh had like 1 minute in his clock, and it's very difficult how you could play this. He's putting maybe some tricks on bishop f3. Doesn't really work now. I mean, f4, and then we have rook e7. I think rook e3 was almost like forced. There's some ideas because of the king being on e1. You could see that the king being on e1 is like the most issue for Gukesh. We have rook here, and then we had rook over h5, knight f6, rook e5, and then he's just take the pawn. And here it's pretty much easy to draw after knight g3, I believe. And rook over, and you just simply go here, attack the pawn, forcing bishop e4, and bishop here is pretty problematic. Even you could play here, you could even take or take here, which is a simple draw. Very strong stuff by Ding though. Very defense resources, which is pretty crazy. You think about this, and it's totally draw here. Bishop e4, king f3, and then f5, king f4, f6. Gukesh is trying, but this position against a grandmaster and somebody like Ding he's able to hold it. Knight e4, and then simply bishop c2, knight d6. Rocky's doing all those good moves here, and then rook d8, and then this king over here, and there's not much you could do. Bishop over, and then simply knight here. And I think here, maybe bishop takes an offer, a draw or something. The reason being is after here, he's just take the pawn, and we had king d2, rook b6, bishop c4, trade of rooks perhaps, takes, and knight d6. Here, take the remaining pawn, and e6. Maybe I could have played like e4. Doesn't matter. It's a draw, of course, so it takes, and we have a draw. Very strong game, though, actually. You think about it, a lot of defense resources, which you need to have. You need to have the talent, and, even when you're in time trouble, you need to find ways to defend. And I mean, he was able to find all these moves in seconds and was able to draw. Ucash had some ways to win the game, but obviously time management seems to be a big issue for both players, maybe even bigger issue for Ucash to try. We see a little bit like, from game one, where, if you guys remember game one, where you had to find bishop c5, and maybe the game continues, he's not losing per se. He didn't find those moves because he was on time trouble, and he has 3 seconds on his clock. So again, when you're dealing with this kind of time management kind of stuff, you try to speed up somehow. Like maybe the opening, you try to play it so fast, even if you're surprised by your opponent reply, you still try to find some ideas. You don't want to try to sink a lot in the opening, and then keep your time on critical stage in the game, and that's the best way you could use the time. However, 72 moves. Good game. The match still tied. We have, next round is gonna be, round 8, or game 8, and Ding is having white. I mean, you have to maybe give some better odds to Ding. That maybe he saves this game. He's able to go and be more excited to try to surprise his opponent by game 8. I feel like even here, with Ucash missing his opportunity, he's still in it. Psychologically, maybe he's still there. I mean, I don't think this is still balanced game. It's anybody's match. Ucash could still win. Ding could still win. This may be decided on small details, like a mistake on a time management kind of thing, like time pressure. The game is still active. Hard to say who could win. But I'm looking forward for more competitive games like this, and we'll see what Ding will do with the white pieces now. Should we see like d4 again? It's going to be an interesting choice. Would he go back to e4, knight f3? We're going to see now maybe a competitive game in game 7. Hopefully you guys enjoy this, and stay tuned for more game reviews. Thank you, folks. Take care.